Welcome to our deep dive into this week's tech news. We're going to be looking at Andrew Kagan's random technical news you can possibly use newsletter for the week of March 7th, 2025. It's a lot to cover. Azure, Microsoft 365, Power Platform, and a whole lot more. I mean, AI, security, quantum computing, it's all in here.
It really is. It's like a whirlwind tour of what's hot in the tech world right now. Anyone who wants to stay ahead of the curve, this is a great place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just jump right in. Kagan starts with Azure, and right off the bat, there's this big push for the Azure AI Foundry. It seems like more than just a new product, right? It feels like a whole strategy.
Yeah, it definitely signals a broader strategy. Microsoft seems to be going all in on making Azure the platform for AI development. Like they're creating a whole ecosystem.
So it's not just about the tools. It's about like building a community around AI on Azure. And speaking of tools, there's this thing about AI agents in Azure Logic apps.
Yeah.
Can you break that down for those of us who aren't, coding experts?
Sure. So basically, imagine automating tasks, but with AI making the decisions. These agents, they can learn, adapt, even interact with users like a more human way. It could change how we do like customer service, supply chain management, all sorts of things.
Wow, that's pretty powerful stuff. And then there's UntraSuite, which is supposed to make employee onboarding easier. I bet IT departments everywhere are excited about that.
Oh, yeah. Onboarding can be a real pain. EntreSuite wants to streamline it all, automate tasks, make sure new employees have the right access from day one. It would free up IT to focus on, more important things.
All right, let's shift gears to Microsoft 365. The SharePoint roadmap for February 2025 just dropped. Anything interesting in there?
Well, one thing that jumps out is the focus on building visually appealing SharePoint portals. They're talking about interactive elements, dynamic content, a much better user experience.
That's about time. And I saw that they're calling this RoboPack add-on for Intune a must-have. Why all the hype?
It solves a big problem for IT managing software packages. RoboPack automates the whole process, so it's faster, less prone to, human error.
So efficiency and less headaches. Got it. Now, this next one is interesting. Microsoft Entra ID is introducing Face Check for security. Sounds futuristic, but also a bit creepy. What do you think?
It's definitely thought-provoking. On one hand, facial recognition could be more secure, more convenient, but of course we have to think about privacy and make sure these systems are used ethically.
Yeah, it's a powerful technology that needs careful consideration. You mentioned those new SharePoint portals earlier. Can you give us a concrete example of what users can expect?
Sure. Imagine a company intranet that's actually engaging. You could have dashboards with key metrics, personalized news feeds, maybe even social spaces for collaboration.
Okay, so a much more dynamic and user-friendly experience than what we're used to with SharePoint.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's dive into Power Platform and Dynamics 365. Code View in Power Platform is now generally available. What does that mean for developers?
It's a big deal. It gives developers more control over their Power Platform projects. They can dig into the code, make custom changes, really fine-tune their apps.
So it's about empowering developers to go beyond the standard features and build truly custom solutions. And Copilot Studio has some new features for February 2025. Anything in particular that stands out?
Well, one interesting thing is the ability to evaluate your AI agents, see how well they're performing. Copilot Studio can even suggest ways to make them better.
Oh, that's cool. It's like having a coach for your AI.
Yeah.
And it looks like Power Apps users can now make editable grid galleries. Can you give us a real-world example of how that would be useful?
Sure. Imagine you're managing a product inventory. With editable grids, you can build an app that lets users view and edit quantities, prices, all right in the app. Much more efficient.
So it's about making data management more direct and dynamic. And Power Pages is getting more control over external authentication providers. Why is that important for security?
Well, security is all about controlling access. By controlling which authentication providers are allowed, organizations can make sure only the right people have access to their apps and data.
Okay, so it's a key part of a strong security strategy.
All right, welcome back. Now let's move into the world of data, analytics, and AI. Things are really heating up in this space.
You're telling me Kagan's newsletter highlights VS Code being positioned as a tool for SQL development. I mean, how does that even work, and is it any good?
Well, it's kind of an interesting development. VS Code, it offers a lot of features that developers are already familiar with, like IntelliSense and debugging tools. But, for people who are used to dedicated SQL tools, it might take some getting used to.
So it's a trade-off, right? Familiarity versus maybe some cool new features.
Yeah.
And speaking of game changers, OpenAI has unveiled GPT 4.5 Orion. I mean, the hype is real with this one. How does it stack up against the previous versions?
Orion is really impressive. They've made big improvements in natural language understanding, code generation, even problem solving. It can handle even more complex tasks, generate different types of creative text formats, and it learns faster. Compared to GPT-4, it's a pretty significant leap forward.
Wow, okay. It sounds like AI is really entering a whole new level. And, the newsletter even mentions this idea of vectors, AI, agents, changing how we interact with databases. What's that all about?
That's where things get really futuristic. Imagine talking to your database like it's a person. You could just ask a question like, show me our top-selling products last quarter, and boom, you get an answer without writing any code.
No more SQL queries. Sign me up. And Microsoft Fabric is being touted as this way to unify data for both analytics and AI.
Mm-hmm.
Who would benefit most from that?
I think any organization that's dealing with data spread across a bunch of different systems would love this. Microsoft Fabric wants to bring it all together so it's easier to analyze, get insights, and even train AI models. It's like a one-stop shop for data.
Okay, so it's about making data more accessible and usable, which is always a good thing. Now let's talk security, compliance, and privacy. Kagan mentions this new focus on licensing and site security within XDR. What's the connection there?
Well, it's all about, tightening up security. By adding licensing information into XDR, security teams can see all their assets, find any vulnerabilities related to software licenses, and basically make sure everything is protected.
So it's not just about responding to threats, it's about preventing them in the first place.
Yeah.
And I can't help but mention this headline about cyber threats in the sky. That sounds pretty dramatic. What's the real story?
It's talking about the growing security risks of drones and other unmanned aerial vehicles. We have to be aware of the dangers, things like physical intrusion, surveillance, data theft, even disruption of critical infrastructure. It's a whole new dimension to security.
Yeah, it's like something out of a movie. And Defender for Cloud is getting new tools for API security posture.
Yeah.
Why is API security such a big deal these days?
Well, APIs are basically how modern applications talk to each other, but they can also be a weak point for attacks. These new tools in Defender for Cloud help organizations assess their API security, find vulnerabilities, and, follow best practices.
So it's about securing the connections that make everything work.
Got it.
Yeah.
And it seems like RDP is being called a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
What are the pros and cons that IT teams need to be aware of?
RDP is super useful for remote access, but it can also be a big security risk if it's not set up properly. Weak passwords, unpatched systems, no multi-factor authentication, all of that can make RDP an easy target for hackers.
So, powerful tool, but use it with caution. And finally, Entra ID managed identity is being promoted as a way to secure apps without secrets. Can you explain that in plain English?
Sure. Think of it as giving your applications an ID card that's managed by Azure Active Directory. So you don't need to store sensitive passwords in your code, which makes it much harder for attackers to steal them. So it's a way to bake security right into your applications. Okay, moving on to learning and certifications. Kagan talks about the importance of understanding global secure access. What is that all about?
It's basically Microsoft's vision for the future of cloud security. It's a combination of zero trust, network segmentation, and identity management, all working together to create a super secure environment.
So a more secure cloud for everyone. And there are free resources for learning linear algebra, which is apparently important for machine learning. Why is that?
Linear algebra is like the math behind machine learning.
Yeah.
If you really want to understand how machine learning works and build better models, you need to know this stuff.
It's the foundation, right?
Oh.
Okay, and Microsoft has a free Intro to Machine Learning course that features generative AI. Why is that a good place to start for beginners?
It's a great way to get your feet wet, especially with generative AI, which is, one of the most exciting areas of AI right now. You can get some hands-on experience and see what it's all about without needing a lot of prior knowledge.
Okay, so a good entry point for anyone curious about AI. There's also a new guide for B2B collaboration with external guests. Anything interesting in there?
One of the key takeaways is the importance of having clear rules for external access. You want to make collaboration easy, but you also need to protect your data.
It's all about finding that balance. And last but not least, there's an introduction to Power Platform connectors and Copilot extensibility. Why is that combo so powerful for developers?
Power Platform connectors let developers connect their apps to all sorts of external services and data. And with Copilot extensibility, they can use AI to make those connections even smarter and more powerful.
So it's about building more intelligent and connected solutions. Great, we covered learning and certifications. Now it's time for the final stretch, industry news and trends. Okay, last but not least, let's see what's shaking in the wider tech world.
Kagan starts with quantum computing, which always sounds so futuristic to me. But the big thing now is modular quantum computing. What does that even mean? Well, it's an interesting idea. Instead of trying to build these gigantic quantum computers, the idea is to create smaller modules that can be connected and scaled up as needed. It could make quantum computing a lot more practical and affordable.
So break it down into smaller pieces, makes sense. And now even web browsers are jumping on the AI bandwagon. Opera is building AI right into its browser. AI agentic browsing, they're calling it. What will that look like for, everyday users?
Imagine having an AI assistant that lives in your browser, helping you with everything, summarizing web pages, generating content, maybe even automating some of your tasks. It could completely change how we use the internet.
Sounds like the browser of the future for sure.
Yeah.
And it seems like Microsoft is really doubling down on Teams, trying to make it the replacement for Skype.
Yeah.
Why the big push, and what's in it for users?
It looks like Microsoft is trying to simplify things, make Teams the one-stop shop for communication and collaboration. For users, it could mean a smoother experience, going from chat to video calls to file sharing, all seamlessly.
So one platform to rule them all. In the AI world, DeepSeek is making waves with its AI-optimized parallel file systems. Why is that so important for AI development?
Well, AI needs a ton of data, right? And managing all that data can be a real bottleneck. DeepSeek's file systems are designed to handle those massive data sets efficiently, which can really speed up AI training and make applications run faster.
It's like building a high-speed rail system for data, I guess. But DeepSeek has some competition now. There's this new open-source math model that's claiming to be just as good, but way cheaper. What does that mean for the industry?
It shows how fast things are moving in AI, and open source is becoming a real force. This new model could make cutting-edge AI accessible to a lot more people and organizations, which could really shake things up.
It's great to see more options out there. And finally, there's Dragon Copilot, an AI assistant specifically for healthcare. What makes this one different, and how could it impact healthcare?
Dragon Copilot is trained on a massive amount of medical data. It can help doctors with documentation, diagnosis, even treatment suggestions. It could really streamline things for healthcare professionals and ultimately lead to better patient care.
That's incredible. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, from AI and security to quantum computing and healthcare tech. It's clear that technology is evolving at an amazing pace. What were some of the most interesting things you learned from this week's tech news?
I think what really stood out for me is the sheer speed and scope of innovation. We're seeing breakthroughs in so many areas, and it's all happening so quickly. It's definitely an exciting time to be following the tech world.
It certainly is. And to our listeners, we want to hear from you. What trends or developments from today's deep dive caught your attention? What do you think will have the biggest impact on your life or your work in the year ahead? Let us know your thoughts, and until next time, keep exploring and stay curious.